And so I wanted to lend any clinical insights I could share with to the discussion, and also learn from people who are working really close to this problem. Those of us in healthcare are not always as aware as you might think about what is happening on the ground level with those who are really suffering from these issues. At times when I've thought about this issue myself, I've been a little bit conflicted, because as a mayor, I see firsthand how opioid addiction has stretched our community resources, put our first responders at risk. And I agree, we need stronger laws regulating the prescription drug industry to push back against the tide that's clearly contributed to this epidemic. But also as a healthcare provider, there is a place for opioid treatment, and patients who need chronic, severe pain control need to have access to these medications. So we have to strike the right balance, and that's not always easy to do. But through the efforts of the Colorado Consortium for Prescription Drug Abuse Prevention, policy changes are being made to the prescribing and dispensing of opioids that are improving the culture of healthcare for the better. The Metro mayors have been strong advocates for education and prevention measures that we can promote locally, such as prescription drug take-back programs, as Jose suggested, and we've advocated for making naloxone available to first responders and family members in our communities. I represent a really small community on the Front Range and can speak firsthand to just how hard it is to get resources, sometimes to folks who don't live in a major metro area. We strongly support the use of additional funding to make treatment and recovery services both more accessible and more successful. These initiatives are being inspired and influenced through the collaborative effort of all the organizations and groups that are here today, and together we are starting to have an impact. The Metro mayors are committed to continuing both our existing efforts and to identifying new solutions that make recovery from opioid addiction not only possible, but expected. So as we kick off Recovery Ready Colorado, I encourage you to engage with your state and local elected officials that can help find solutions that are right for the communities that you work in. And as mayors, we want to partner with you on programs and initiatives that have the best chance for success. And finally, I also want to challenge you to educate and influence medical professionals that you encounter by sharing your experience, your expertise, and your empathy for the families and the individuals that are suffering with this disease. Your perspective is unique and your work is inspiring. So on behalf of the Metro Mayor's Caucus, I want to thank you for being here today and for the important work that you're doing on behalf of all Coloradans.
Thank you all very much. Just to hear the commitment from our elected officials in terms of this work and where we need to go and how we're going to help people with recovery is inspiring. So thank you all very much. So now we're going to hear now from some of our panelists, or folks who've been doing some of this work in different fields. So we're going to do a little bit of transition here and get those first set of panelists up front. Just a reminder for folks, we are doing a live stream Facebook, so there are folks right now who are watching online. But there's going to be more folks as this gets posted in the future. We're going to see in a broader reach in terms of people understanding what it is that we're doing here today. So with that said, if you are sitting towards the back, you're not likely to be in the camera, so if you don't want to be seen. And just keep in mind that your voice will be recorded if you are asking some questions, but we're hoping to get to that point with some dialogue. So our moderator today, very pleased to introduce Mr. Michael Miller with Young People in Recovery. And Michael's going to come up and help us walk through our first set of panelists. So Michael, I'm going to turn over to you.
Jose, we need a couple minutes to switch.
Sure, so give us a few minutes.
Yeah, we're just going to take a couple minutes to transition into this, and I think there's going to be a video.
A little video, so we'll give you a video to watch.
I'll follow you with this, hold on. Oh, Jesus, ready. Okay, come in.
Actually,
Oh, okay.
we're going to actually ask him to.
Am I blocking anybody's view? What? Yeah, I see that. This doesn't have much of a wide angle. See what I mean?
You might not know everyone in your community, but if you do, you know that people in recovery from mental and substance use disorders are on the rise. Reach out for support and begin your recovery journey. Join the Voices for Recovery, strengthening families and communities.
Irene, I can't get anybody in the camera. If I'm in there, it's possible. I'll come back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you think it's
No. Yeah.
We're ready to go, Michael.
Perfect. All right, so again, my name's Michael.
The camera's
I'm
not in.
actually a person in sustained recovery myself from substance use disorder. I have the honor of working for an organization called Young People in Recovery, and it's a sit and chat with these experts here today about what it's going to take to get Colorado to become recovery ready. So the first panel really consists of Colorado influencers. These are folks that are making an impact regionally. So I'm going to go ahead and let them each introduce themselves individually as well.
Judge Leroy Kirby started the drug court in 2011 and been presiding over that since 2011.
I'm Ted Bradshaw. I'm the HR Director of Panelists in Boulder, Minnesota, Colorado.
And I'm Toni Miner, and I am a mother in recovery from meth, and I also facilitate Circle of Parents in Recovery group.
I am Melissa Mouton. I'm the founder of 5280 High School. We are a new charter school opening up in Denver Public Schools next year, and we have a program for students in recovery, high school students.
Perfect. Thanks. So the first question really is talking about how we can empower others to champion the idea that recovery is both possible and attainable for anyone that may be struggling currently. Do you want to start it off, Judge Kirby?
Yes, since I have a mic, I will.
There you go.
Started this drug court in 2011 because there's just evidence-based principles that this drug court is based upon. And we've seen, unfortunately, we have people maybe struggling with addiction that are not in the criminal justice system, but eventually we see some of these people getting into the criminal justice system. And what I've seen in the past is just not a positive way to deal with people with severe use disorders in the program. So we were fortunate in Adams County and the support of the Chief Justice of the state of Colorado to actually create a drug court. And with doing that, we're helping people and graduating, and recidivism is down, and they're reconnecting with their families, and they're employed again. And so, by using evidence-based principles in the program, our state court was just one of the first state courts in the state of Colorado to be accredited as a drug court in the state of Colorado. And that was Chief Justice Nancy Rice's, one of her achievements that she mentioned at the judicial conference that I just got back from, was she was proud that for the last year, this is something that's happened. So we're one of the first ones in the state. But we can see through the courts, through judicial supervision, through probation supervision, through evidence-based protocols, through treatment, that we can get these people through treatment. And it changes their life. From someone who was living in a shed behind a house to now is working, has a car, and is doing fantastic. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Kirby. Just a quick note, too. I'm actually a graduate of his drug court program.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So as a former probation officer and sheriff's deputy, I thought I had seen it all over those 27 years. And I retired and entered the private sector. And I was blown away by the opioid crisis in Boulder. We have had people dying in our bathrooms from overdoses, and we've had two young, brilliant, energetic, fabulous young men die from heroin overdoses during the past 2 years. So I think my message first is it's present in the workplace, probably universal in Colorado. You may not see it, but it's there. I think heroin addiction and sometimes opioids in general are maybe a little harder to spot at first because people can function and you don't smell of alcohol when you're using heroin or opioids. So they can pass for a while. But please, if you're an employer, or for those of you who know employers who work in this kind of human resources area, be aware that it's there. I missed it. I totally missed it with these two young men that passed away. I need to re-educate myself on what to look for, and I think all employers need to really focus on what the symptoms and symptomatology is for this particular addiction. It is there. It's not going away. And the good news is that we have people in recovery in our store, people who have been through the drug courts, and it does work. So there is hope, but it's going to take attention and focus and energy. I liked what the Lieutenant Governor said, I believe it was, or Ms. Kaufman said about glue. We all have to stick together because this is a thing that has many parts that need to work in coordination with each other. So let's stick to each other like glue and make some real progress with these folks who are struggling.
Tommy?
So I have very deep roots in addiction, along with myself and my now 2 adult children. And anybody that I talk to, I tell them, if I can do this, anybody can do it. I used meth every day for 6 years, but I used other drugs prior to that. Got into a lot of trouble and managed to get out of it. And now with my Circle of Parents group that I facilitate, we are really building a community in this group, which is what parents need. Parents have struggles being parents because there's no handbook that tells you how to parent a child. But when you're a parent in recovery, you have special struggles that you go through. And that's something that we talk about and we support each other with, is you struggle anyways with being a parent, but being a parent in recovery and the guilt that you carry and everything that goes along with that makes it even harder and even harder to stay clean. We all have really bonded together, and we bring new people in all the time, and it's a great, great support group for during and after. Thank you.
Melissa?
Yeah, I think this is my 9th year in education, and I've been in high schools the whole time, and there's no doubt that there is a serious problem with addiction among high school kids. It's something that a lot of people don't like to think about, but it's there. And I think you go to any high school in Denver and anywhere in Europe, you see it. And I think the beauty is that there are other schools out there, not in Denver, but there are other schools, recovery schools, that are pioneering this effort. And if you walk into those schools, within 5 minutes, you can sense the magic. You can feel the success that they're having. And early on in our design process, maybe 2 years ago, I took some people from our team here. Some of them who are in recovery, some of them who didn't know anything about recovery. We have a very diverse team. And we visited a recovery high school, and every single one of them left there with this sense of possibility, that if they can do it there, we can do it in Denver, and it is possible. And there are numerous stories, and you have to think about them in one by one. They're people. And if you talk to these kids one by one, you will hear the stories, and hopefully over time, as these stories build up, and we build this repertoire of success, then we'll create the tide of change.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. My next question is really specifically, actually, I guess I could aim towards both Ted and Melissa too. A little bit more specifically, being, are there any resources that actually stand out to you guys for the person in recovery to gain access to suitable housing, gainful employment, or continuing education opportunities?
I'm fortunate to live in Boulder County, which has a very strong network of support for people facing all kinds of challenges. So part of the issue is just educating and communicating with each other and with our employees about what is actually available out there to members of the community. Boulder County has always been a leader in this, and I'm very proud to have graduated from that organization. And I do whatever I can to publicize and communicate the resources and connections that are out there. You can't make anybody do treatment. You have to work with them and try to get them motivated. And when they're ready, we need to be there. And we need to be ready to jump on it when someone presents and says, you know what, I've got a problem, I need help, and I'm asking for it. So as an employer, Alfalfa's has to be very open and accepting and supportive. And I think if we can create and continue to have that atmosphere in our workplaces where people aren't feeling so terribly ashamed, scared, just horrible about their situation, and if we can create that accepting atmosphere, that's really one of the first major steps, and that's what we work to do.
Great, thanks. And Melissa, on the educational perspective?
Sure, I can only speak for Denver, and we will be the first recovery program in Denver that I know of. I think regarding the question of access, the number one thing for us is equity. And we We designed 5280 High School to be free and available to all students in Denver public schools. And that's very unusual in the realm of recovery high schools. And most of them have some sort of fee associated with them. And so I think that is of a primary concern when you deal with youth and access, being able to access it no matter what zip code you're from, no matter what income level that your family has, that is crucial. And so we're the first one, we're hoping to provide that access to all students in Denver.
Great, thanks. Tony or Judge Kirby, does anything stand out to you about exemplary resources to find employment or housing or education?
You know, I really wish that there were a lot more resources than what there actually are out there. And I can tell you that for the first time since I got clean, I ventured out on my own with my children and was able to get into my own place last year. I was terrified because of my criminal record and because of my addiction that I was not going to get any place, which is what other parents run into all the time. It is so important for us to help these families realize their leadership within themselves and that they are worth it, and we really have to build that within them so that they can go out and try to get the housing and try to get the employment. I really feel like I'm breaking barriers. I am actually an employee of Jefferson County Human Services, which I was told that I could never be because of my criminal history, and I'm breaking those barriers for the people that are following behind me. And also the work that I'm doing with Illuminate with the Circle of Parents in Recovery. I want to give hope to the parents and for them to not give up. I have been fighting for years to be able to do what it is that I do. And it is giving parents hope. And I really think that we're all in a position where we can give these parents hope. And so that we can really help them to be better for their children. Thank you. Judge?
Well, Ted, I can't force them to treatment. So that's what I'm going to do. So, but that's the big piece, though, for us in Adams County is the treatment providers that we have. We have to have access to treatment providers, and we have to have access to people that use evidence-based principles, because judges order people to go to treatment all the time, and if it's not effective, it's not going to get anything done. So that's one of our, we monitor that. That takes the judicial leadership to, it's not just sitting there and ordering it, it's who is this treatment provider? Do they provide evidence-based principles and structures and curriculum? So that's what we've been doing, and like the Arapahoe House in Adams County is a Medicaid, that people on Medicaid can go there and get the treatment, and they've been excellent.
Perfect, thanks guys. I'm going to roll this next one into kind of two parts, all right? So the first one is, why do you think recovery is important itself, period? And then the second part of it is, what do you think it's going to take to equip our state to become recovery ready? Ted?
As an employer, recovery is important because we need to have a stable, competent, safe, attentive, involved workforce. So when we do have people who are abusing alcohol or drugs, it really is inefficient for us as a company. It impacts our bottom line as a company. And that's all in addition just to the human tragedy that's involved. So we need a very aware, competent, and energetic workforce. What was the second part?
Why do you think recovery itself is just important in life for anyone, whether you're an ally or a person that's seeking or in recovery yourself?
Because substance abuse is so terribly destructive to individuals, to families, to communities. These young men that I talked about that we lost, their families are going to feel that pain for the rest of their lives. The people that have overdosed in our bathrooms aren't terribly connected, it doesn't look like, but there's somebody out there in the world that loves them. There's somebody's children. So we have got to, as a community, and employers are a big part of the community. We spend most of our waking hours at work. I know I do. So we have got to pay attention to what's happening in the workplace because that's such a big part of everyone's life. And again, if we can maintain and create that open and accepting, non-shaming atmosphere for people who are struggling, that's a huge first step.
Perfect, thank you. Tony?
Addiction is a family disease. It doesn't just affect the person that is the addict, it affects the entire family. And I witnessed this with my daughters who had to live through my addiction with me and then grew up to become addicts themselves. We are a part of this community. And we need to be able to believe that we can recover from the bad choices that we made. I once had a very, very wonderful lady tell me years ago that, Tony, you're not a bad person, you just made some bad choices. We can work with that. And that really is what helped me to gain that ability in myself to be able to believe that I am worth it and that I can recover. And like I said, it's not just about us. We have children. And these children, a lot of times, grow up to be addicts themselves. And then their children grow up to be addicts. We have got to stop this cycle. Recovery is so important, and it is a community problem. And we all really need to band together and not label and not judge people for being addicts. I often tell people that when I was a little girl, not once did I ever say, when I grow up, I'm going to be a meth addict. When I grow up, I'm going to ignore my children and be a terrible mother. That was not my plan. My plan was to grow up and to be somebody wonderful. And now I am someone wonderful because I am fighting. And we all deserve to have that chance. And we can do it. All too often I hear, you're just a meth addict, or you're a meth addict, you can't do it. I am doing it, and we can do it. We just need people to believe in us to do it.
Thank you. I think within the educational context, it's not hard to see the potential benefits that recovery has. When you're dealing with people who have literally just started their lives and there are decades ahead, both economically, when you think about bang for your buck, stopping an addiction problem at an early age is over the top beneficial to our society, both economically, job-wise, life-wise, family-wise. Like when you catch people young and you help them learn how to be in recovery early, the impacts really are truly fundamental to our society, is what I believe. And then I think too, the second question had to do with
How to make, what do you think would make Colorado recovery right? What would get us to that point?
I think it's a minor shift in how you look at it, but if you forget about the savings economically and the jobs and all that, and you look at it like, well, what does recovery bring to the table? Not what does it stop, what does it prevent, but like, what does it bring to the table? And people in recovery have gifts that we as a nation, as a society, would benefit from. How people in recovery manage conflict, how they reflect and improve their lives on a daily basis, how they engage with each other in a community level and support each other and receive support from others. Like, there are fundamental aspects of recovery that are just good and beneficial to communities as a whole. So I think that's probably something else that would be good.
Perfect. Thank you, Melissa. Judge Kirby, final thought there?
Well, everyone said, Tony, these are individuals in our community, and they affect us, whether we want to be affected by them or not. I mean, it's important. They're suffering through a medical diagnosis, severe use disorder, at least in my program, and we need to treat them appropriately so that they can heal, and then we all heal, and we all do that. And we can see those. It's a cost to society. It's a cost to broken families, and then the government has to get involved and take away children. It's a cost to the employers. There's this cost, and this is a way that we can help shape. And I think it's working together that we can hopefully work towards that problem. I had one gentleman that graduated from my program. He had 100 criminal entries on his record, 100 in Adams County alone. He looked at me when he graduated and he said, "I wish this program would have been here 30 years ago." He just went to DOC, cost the state money. There's been victims of offenses. But now he's a graduate, and he's clean.
It's incredible. Thank you guys so much for participating in this panel. If we could all give them a round of applause. And we will transition to our next panel.
Yeah, let's take a moment here. There's going to be a video. We're going to show the video. Let's take a minute here. And we're going to take about a 10-minute break. We want you to return. There are some refreshments out this way if you like. Our restrooms are down the hall, but 10 minutes sharp, so 2:30, we're going to get started with the next panel.
Are you
so far?
I like it. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't had to different pizza.
Well, I mean, hope that this meets and exceeds your expectations.
No, it's like, yeah.
They can hear us still?
It's sitting on that end.
We're in the front.
We got there. It's even better. Are there 5 people on this?
Yeah, they have to.
So we suck.
From 52 She might have just ran out.
So, anyway, well,
Not yet.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, it's
no, that's So now I'm like, oh my god, like I was like basically got what I was saying and then made an outline, so we're doing a Facebook Live. So they're facilitating.
Good. That's right. But you look familiar
Work, are we ready?
Sure.
Is this going to be okay? Yes. Okay, let me start helping you. Your seats. Still on the ground for freshman.
Let me just make sure this is unobstructed.
Cheese, fruit, beverage, coffee. Need it?
Yeah, no, I'll be.
The panelists come up.
Nice to meet you. In the camera.
And are we okay on the live stream? Okay, thank you all very much. So we're gonna zero in a little bit. We're gonna take that next degree of magnification. We were kind of taking a look at this from an influencer's perspective. Thank you all very much for those insights. And I think as I listen to each of these things and I think about the work that's going to be formed, we certainly have a lot of different areas that we can potentially be thinking about what can we do together to make some improvement. And so there's going to be plenty for this new work group to really be thinking about and prioritizing. And I want to make sure, I don't think, did Rob leave? Maybe Rob will come back. Will Rob be back here? He'll be back. Because beforehand, I want to introduce Dr. Rob Valley. Make sure people know Dr. Valley from the Consortium for Drug Abuse Prevention. But now we're going to take a different degree of magnification and really kind of take a look a little bit more on the finger on the pulse of what's going on around recovery closer to the ground. Is that where we're headed? Yeah. So Michael, I'll turn it over to you. Get us rolling on this next one and go from there.
Perfect. So I hope the break was great for everybody. I had fun, right? So this is our community leaders panel. So these are folks that are helping us get a more kind of local community perspective, and they are here to represent like our literal boots on the ground, and they are leaders within their communities themselves on the front lines of facing this substance use issue that we're facing currently. So I will let each of you introduce yourselves individually, and we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll just pass around the mic here.
My name is Marcela Pais. Buenas tardes. I am the owner and a therapist at Idea Forum Incorporated with 4 locations in Denver, Aurora, Brighton, and Thornton.
Hi, I'm Robert Gilletta. I'm the Director of Offender Services and Intensive Case Management at Crossroads. I'm also the founder of Addict to Athlete and a recovering addict also.
I'm Mackenzie Burdick. I'm a program director at Young People in Recovery, so I oversee all of our state programming and some of our national programming as well.
I'm Jack Dugweiler, a teacher at Middle Park High School in Grand County, and helped start a Celebrate Recovery there 3 years ago.
Perfect. Jack, if you wouldn't mind just moving a little bit closer, just so that I can say hi to you from a little bit closer? You got it. Cool. So my first question for you guys is pretty important because I think that oftentimes it's really, really easy for us as a state to focus specifically on like urban areas, right? In Denver traditionally. How do you guys think that we can enable more major engagement in the efforts for recovery in communities across the state and not just Denver?
Well, I think it's critical that we recognize that not only in terms of rural and other parts of the state, but the fact that every community is different. Aurora has a population that can be very different from North Denver. And Brighton, a lot of the different types of drugs can be very different. Employment, all of those areas can be very different. So we need to really ensure that we know what communities we're addressing and develop the strategies specific to those populations. I think that's where it begins, definitely the communities, and then of course culturally specific services for all of the communities that we care about.
Absolutely, thank you.
She said everything I was going to say.
Okay.
I actually think that, bringing meetings like this down to those areas, I'm from Pueblo, a lot of times we are participating in groups that meet up here, we're participating in services, but the meetings and all of the kickoffs are up in Denver. I also think that if we could do some of these kickoffs in some of those smaller areas like Pueblo, Trinidad, Walsenburg, all of those areas that are right outside of New Mexico that are having the same issues as the big city issues, right? And then also, if we see engagement from our leaders, especially at the state level, then we believe also that they care about us and that they care about our community. And it's not just up here in Denver where there obviously is more press, more availability for services. We would love to have those services down there. We would love to have community leaders meeting down there and let us know and let the families in those areas know that we're just as important as Denver.
Perfect. Thank you. Mackenzie?
I think a lot of what YPR's focus is really in cultivating local leadership. So we utilize a chapter network across the state and the nation to really develop advocates. So we work a lot in employment, education, and housing, and cultivating kind of those leadership skills. So how do you talk about recovery? So what is recovery messaging in general? How do we advocate for ourselves in employment and education and accessing equitable housing opportunities? I think it's really about making sure that in each of these places we have local leaders that really work to kind of shift the game wherever it is that they are. And I think kind of like what Rob was saying is that we need to meet people where they are. So we need to be in these communities on the ground with them. We can't be, sitting in our chairs from Denver saying everyone needs to be doing 1, 2, and 3 from afar. It just doesn't make sense. So again, I think it's cultivating local leadership and then empowering those local leaders to take action wherever they are.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Jack?
Come see us. Go ski it for the day and then stop by a meeting. The other thought that I had was perhaps a regional meeting in Steamboat Springs where we invite folks in recovery from the Northwest Colorado and begin to network at that regional level would be very helpful.
Perfect, thank you, Jack. And Rob, if you wouldn't mind starting this one off for me. What's currently being done in your community, like Pueblo or the surrounding areas, to support a person in recovery? And in addition to that, what kind of challenges or barriers are existing there to helping people enter into safe recovery?
Okay, that is a lot. That is a lot. So what we do is I like to say recovery education prevention, right? That's what we're doing. We're out there, we have programs, we're all working together. Something that we say is leave your logo at the door, right? Crossroads isn't getting in the way, Health Solutions isn't getting in the way of another agency. We're doing the best services for the best client. We're meeting families where they need to be met, right? So one thing that we're doing in Pueblo is we have programs like Celebrate Recovery, we have programs like Addict to Athlete, we have programs like Health Solutions, Crossroads, offender programs, programs for parents, programs for families, right? So one thing we're doing is we're trying to hit all aspects of recovery, right? And so we work well together, leave your logo at the door, do what's right for the person, do what's right for the client. We don't always have the answer at Crossroads, and other agencies don't always have the answer. The biggest problem that we have that I think that if I have a chance as a recovering person to say is that nobody gets addicted to anything that, excuse my language, but nobody gets addicted to anything that sucks, right? It always serves a purpose in their life. For us, I think that the drug problem in the United States is also a purpose problem. Drugs give you a false sense of purpose, a false sense of intimacy, and a false sense of control. And what we need to do as a community and what we need to do as recovery educators and people promoting recovery is help them have that, help them have that purpose again, help them have that intimacy, and help them have that control of their lives that we can give them through recovery.
Perfect. Thank you, Rob. Mackenzie?
So at YPR, I mentioned that we have a chapter network in my last answer, but a lot of what we really do to kind of create those support services for people in recovery or seeking recovery is we meet them where they are. So we meet them, in the justice system, we meet them at treatment centers, and we really work to bridge the gap between recovery communities and treatment spaces or court spaces, whatever that looks like, so that there's no real gap in the way people are feeling supported in accessing recovery. So our chapter networks and our programs really serve to build rapport through life skills curriculums, through all recovery meetings in our chapters to really cultivate that sense of community on the ground. We try and do it across the state so that people are in Pueblo moving through treatment centers or the justice system there, and they say, hey, I know this person in YPR, they're a chapter lead here in Pueblo. I'm going to start calling them to see when their all recovery meetings are and how I can access them, if I can get a ride. We really work to bridge that gap by meeting people again where they are and creating that community that helps to sustain long-term recovery.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Jack, your thoughts on what's specifically happening in your part of the state and also how other things that we can do to bridge the gap to helping people in sustain recovery?
You bet. Things that work well for our Celebrate Recovery, we provide that safe place for people to come and share. We're not there, we're all volunteers, we're not there to fix anybody, and we're all doing 12-step work. And so just provide that safe place and it becomes a family. We have a great connection with accountability partners and sponsors. Some of our challenges when we have participants that need additional services, connecting them with counselors or mental health services that are limited where we're at, and especially getting them to those additional services. Transportation in our county is a big deal. We don't have public transportation, and so helping to get people from their home in Hot Sulphur or Grand Lake or Winter Park to a meeting to additional services, that's one of our bigger challenges.
Thank you, Jack. And it's Marcella, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got the pronunciation.
Great. I think, and I think it's really critical for us to provide the services that assist clients in understanding that there's a strong connection between prevention, recovery, and aftercare. Everybody has a role in that. So we've certified 19 individuals to do trauma-informed care. They're trauma-certified professionals because we know that long-term, and we heard about it a little bit already this morning, what happens when I'm using and then my children use and perhaps my parents had used. And we're committed to that so that we understand that it has to be a long-term impact. And it has to affect, not only does it affect the entire family, that means we need to treat them even if they're not present. So that we treat the entire person, and trauma is a huge part of that. It does serve those purposes, as you said, and it usually begins from childhood. It's a childhood development disorder. We also then partner with a lot of individuals. 5280 has already made contact with us. We reach out to other individuals who belong to organizations because we know that it's so widespread. And we do it because we're in my community. It's the people that look like me.
Perfect, thank you so much. I'm actually going to direct this next question to have you start, Mackenzie. What are the words or language used in your area of influence to speak about recovery? And I specifically ask this because we're aiming to make this more of a public health conversation and less of anything else, right? So what, in your experience, is important to convey in terms of the way that we message about substance use and recovery?
Yeah, so we focus a lot on recovery messaging, both for an individual with substance use disorder as well as a community at large, how we speak about things. You'll hear, I think most of us up here have already talked about, people with substance use disorders. We focus so completely on person-first language and making sure that a person as an individual is always recognized before any disorder, they might be identified by. And so the thing is, though, I think what goes beyond that is utilizing language that's not stigmatizing. So again, that's why we focus on person-first language, but it's also breaking a lot of stigmas that exist around identifiers, and really recognizing this as a public health issue. If we were to talk about someone with cancer, them accessing treatment and then being able to enter recovery is no question in anyone's brain. Because this is a public health issue, it should be treated the exact same way. So let's talk about it as a disorder, as what it is. Let's talk about it by recognizing people first always, and respecting how they identify themselves. I think that everyone has a choice in the way that they operate in their space of recovery and how they access recovery. I think being respectful of multiple pathways of recovery is critical. This isn't a one-stop shop. So let's be respectful of the diversity that people experience within both their use and treatment and recovery. And I think, let's talk about it like that.
Perfect. Thanks, Jack. Do you have any thoughts on the importance of the language that we use as advocates, or what's specifically happening in your part of Colorado in terms of the way we talk about it?
You bet. We struggle with some of the same issues. A lot of people don't want to hang out with those people, us, in recovery, and even though they may be trapped behind that wall of shame and guilt, and so we talk about and try to make a big deal about addressing hurts, habits, and hang-ups, and try to get past that stigma of, well, it's just a bunch of drug addicts and alcoholics, and yes, we are, but we've got other things going on as well, and so. But it is an issue for us getting people in the door, that kind of stigma.
Thanks, Rob. Any thoughts on that?
The term addict, I always say that the only thing more abused than opiates right now is the word addict, right? I'm addicted to Starbucks, I'm addicted to the gym. I think that we need to clarify what addict means, right? And we also need to clarify what dependency means. Because people will associate medically assisted treatment with being addicted to methadone, being addicted to Suboxone, we have to change some of that terminology so that they understand dependency is, you could be dependent on medicine, right? But you become addicted to something when that behavior matches that dependency, becomes antisocial. The other thing I just want to point out is when we talk recovery, I just want to say this, we also have to be able to demonstrate that recovery is not abstinence, right? Recovery is when you are recovering the things you lost in addiction. You are recovering respect, you're recovering employment, you're recovering so many things. And as they spoke earlier, our people in our communities, they cannot recover unless we have the support of people who hire, of people who forgive, of people who help sustain a living situation. And so, I just think that being clear with people and educating them on what those terms mean.
Perfect. Thank you, Ron. Marcel?
Well, definitely in their first language, in their primary culture, regardless of whether we've assimilated or not. We don't begin with using that language. We begin using the language that's so important to them. It's very strength-based. When you're doing trauma-informed care, you look at strengths. So we talk a lot about familia, la cultura, because we know that cultura recovers, it supports. And so it's really important that we begin with that language, and then we move forward with where they're at in their lives. One of our favorite sayings is, footprints only tell you where you've been, not where you're going. And so that's where we begin. It's what you did, it's not who you are. It's not what you are. And it's important to be located right where they live. I live, I entertain, I work in my communities. I don't have to go very far to run into individuals. And you're going to engage with us at one point in your lives or another, whether you like it or not. Hopefully one day, I'm not going to be in front of the judge, but you're going to engage with me anyway if that's where I end up. it'll be social services, it'll be the police officer when there's family violence as a result of drug abuse. And I think it's also really important that we recognize that it isn't just opiates. In fact, in my community, rarely did it start there. There are a lot of gateway drugs. Marijuana is one, and not just to other drugs, but to other behaviors. I don't know how many times we've talked to individuals who are chronic marijuana users who will steal to get their weed. So it's a gateway drug to a lot of behaviors. We have to talk about all of them and not only opiates, but first in their culture, their language, and strength-based.
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Jack, I'm going to start with you on this one. And it's the simplest of the questions that I'll ask, and why is recovery so important to you?
Well, this month I celebrate 3 years clean and sober, and so in that time I've seen a lot of miracles, and I get a front row seat actually in Grant County seeing a lot of miracles. It means it's important to me because it brings freedom and healing from our addictive, compulsive, dysfunctional behaviors, and wow. It's an ongoing process, and I also think that brings us to, again, another struggle where we're at is we've got to be committed to recovery for the long haul. And many of us, myself included, are going to be in recovery for life, and that long haul is presenting some challenges to us up there. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks. Mackenzie?
This is a loaded question. I would say it's anything but simple. Well, it's pretty simple, I think, because humanity. We're all humans, right? So every individual deserves to be recognized and met for exactly who they are, where they are, regardless of status or identity in any capacity. And so I think that when we start to recognize people from a strengths-based perspective, as we should 100% of the time, you empower people to live self-directed lives. It improves our economy, it improves family lives. And that's critical. That's what we all want. So why we wouldn't support initiatives to help further that endeavor, I can tell you. So to me, I think the bottom line is that we're all human. So let's be human and let's support that, what that looks like for all of us.
Thanks, Mackenzie.
Recovery is important because there's a butterfly effect, right? There's an effect. When people recover, they affect, just like they affect people when they're using. The lady that spoke earlier, myself, other people that are in recovery, when we get sober, we go big. I would like to think that my wife and I and some of the other speakers have made huge impacts in their community by being in recovery. And just like addiction affects a community, so does recovery. And so I think recovery is important, and everybody's recovering from something, right? And so it's also important for the communities themselves to recover, not just the individuals, but from the town itself to recover. And it's also important because then I pretty much stopped stealing all your guys' stereos out of your car also.
Marcella?
Well, as long as I'm confessing, you better not take my Starbucks. Morning, afternoon. Anyway, it's important because it's family. It's important because it's family. And regardless of the place, if it's in the country, if it's in a farmhouse, if it's in a community, if it's in a large metropolitan area, it's a family. And everyone has value. It's someone's son or daughter, it's someone's sister, it's someone's child. This week alone, we've had several individuals who have relapsed on opiates, on heroin. For example, mothers, pregnant mothers with dependent children. It's heartbreaking. I love the work that we do. We're all committed. There's some counselors that work with IDEA present because we care. That's one of the reasons that we locate where we do, because we don't run from the individuals we work with. They're our family. That's the way we see it, and it's important because it affects all aspects of their lives, including family violence. There's a huge correlation between substance abuse, child abuse, and intimate partner violence. And it doesn't discriminate. It's in every community. It's in all ethnicities, the LGBT community. So really, when you're working with substances and you're working with recovery, you're going to affect all aspects of their lives, not just employment and housing.
Thank you very much. And so the last question is really kind of central as to why we're all here specifically. So Rob, in your experience and based on the way that you've interpreted the challenges that you face in your community and that we face in the state, what do you think it will take for us to become a recovery-ready state and for your community to become recovery-ready?
It's 100% education and investment. We need to educate everyone, even the families not suffering with addiction. I'm not sure if other communities have it, but I know in Pueblo we have Facebook where we show the people who are affected by addiction and the arrests that the police made, right? And if you read the comments under those pictures, they're very negative. Get this trash off of our streets. This guy deserves a bigger bond. This guy, how dare you let him out so fast or let her out so fast? We need to educate and get away from the stigma and also like have people understand that recovery is possible, and not just that recovery is possible, but that it can happen to anyone at any time. It's just the circumstances just have to be the perfect storm for somebody to get sucked into addiction. So I think if we just educate, help people understand, help them understand what other families are going through also, because I know people are burned out, and I know they're mad, and I know they're upset, and they're tired of the crime, and they're tired of seeing it. But at the same time, if we can educate them to understand what some of those individuals are going through, they can understand that no one in their right minds do the things that addicts do because we're not in our right minds. So,
I think, from my perspective, it kind of comes from a two-tier, two-pronged process. It comes from both like a local individual level and kind of that larger state government, national government level, where it's kind of a prevention and treatment-based system, and not in the sense of treatment centers. Treatment in the sense of our systems need to be fixed and shifted. So from kind of this high-level perspective, how do we create equitable access to housing, employment, and education? How do we start doing targeted recruitment? What does that look like? How do we educate people in power to really shift systems that they're in so that these people who are experiencing substance use disorder, their families and their communities can actually advocate for possible change. So I think it's cultivating leadership from two levels, and it's making sure that people are educated on, what recovery looks like in a sustainable way and how we create those systems to allow people to access that.
Thanks, Mackenzie. Jack?
Thank you. For us, doing what we say we're going to do is a big one. So if we say we're going to have a meeting every Friday night, we're going to have a meeting every Friday night this year, and then next year, and then next year. And as a volunteer ministry, that takes a toll. And so support from other groups as we look to long-term recovery. If Celebrate Recovery isn't working out, let's get you down to the AA meeting or to the next source or the next resource. There's not a lot up there in the mountains. And so I think just being committed to a person's recovery long-term is where I feel we should be for recovery ready.
Thanks. Marcella?
Embrace. That means you come to us. Media, all of that is wonderful. It works, but you got to be in the community. We do have probation officers that come to IDEA to meet with clients, to meet with us. What's in the best interest of the client? What else can we do? What else can we get for this client? So it has to be an embrace, especially for certain cultures. Mine being one, being Latina, the Latina culture. Don't be afraid. Because like I said, you'll embrace me one way or the other if I'm using substances, and it's best when it's a warm embrace, rather than with handcuffs, rather than with a cell. But I would also say that it does require a great deal of funding. It's the last word I like to use, but that almighty dollar, it has to be immediate, it has to be a lot. I'm still waiting for a lot of the funding that I've read about. I'm still waiting for it on 29th and Federal, on Mississippi and Sable, on 4th and Bridge in Brighton, in Thornton. It's not reached those corners yet, and that's where it happens.
Thank Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all you guys for bringing up some really, really important points today. Specifically, what I took from it the most is the idea of collaboration, kind of amongst people that we have on this panel, everyone in this room specifically, and our opportunity as community members and leaders to come together to solve problems, not only in like the major metro centers, right, which is where we always hear about stuff in media, and start to bring it to every single corner of our state. And I think that this is a really great first step to start collaborating. We'll do the next one in Pueblo. I think it's probably a good idea. And again, I'd like to thank you guys, all of you, for participating with us today. And if we give them a round of applause.
We have a few more minutes here. I'm going to give you chances in the audience here, an opportunity to make some comments or ask some questions. First of all, I think this was purposeful, the way that we planned this today. We had to make a decision around this particular approach to launch Recovery Ready Colorado. Do we go out into the community and get a big auditorium and bring in lots of people? We thought about that, to hear that message. But then we thought, really, let's be more purposeful, particularly to start off with a solid ground of commitment from some key elected officials to say that this is important to get that message. And that's when we decided live stream. So it's like live stream is one of the ways to get this out a little bit more broadly. But certainly I think there's the opportunity for us to think through with the new work group, is there a way to do this with the community? And to have the discussion then with employers, with people in recovery, with school folks, in communities to discuss how are they going to be recovery ready. So those are some things we're going to turn over to the new work group to think through. And you should know, now let me just make sure, I'm going to look around the room. Am I going to fall into this again? What happened? Where did Rob go to? Every time I mention Rob, wait a minute, I see Rourke here. So it's like, Rourke Weaver, raise your hand, Rourke. This is Rourke Weaver here, folks. Rourke, we understand that you volunteered to be a coach, right? And Dana, is that right? Dana Smith over here, another co-chair for this new work group. So certainly, we really want you to fill out some information. We have a green sheet here. Get us some information, or send us an email at oceconnects at coag.gov. So those of you on Facebook, oceconnects at coag.gov. If you're interested in being part of this group. Now keep in mind, there's different ways to be involved. Certainly, if you want to roll up your sleeves and really get into it, there'll be a work group form. Generally, those work groups meet about every other month, but there are options to participate by GoToMeeting and from a distance. You don't have to be in the metro area to participate. If you just want to receive information and stay in tune, that's another way. We can get you on the email list and get you some contact info. But one of the things about connecting this to the consortium is that, and through the task force, the Substance Use Treatment Response Task Force has 3 committees. There's a Substance Exposed Newborns Committee. Jay Woodard is one of the co-chairs here, and Dr. Catherine Wells is the other. There's a data committee where we look at data trends, and then we have the consortium as our prescription drug opioid group. There's Gina over here with the staff, and then is Michael here? Where's Michael? Did he step out too? Michael's right over here. Where's Rob? Find Rob. He's on the phone. We'll get him in here in a minute. But the consortium offers a framework for some support from staff to this work group. But in addition to that, both the task force and the consortium are connected to a network of communities that are really stepping up to address opioid crisis, but also just substance use in general, and particularly the increase in access to treatment. So we have a network through the consortium to really expand this discussion of Recovery Ready out to those communities and get information, and maybe go out, like you said, visit some of these folks as well to involve them in this discussion. So really looking forward to what we can do and the potential there with that. So with that, are there some comments from the audience, some thoughts, reflections? Did you hear something today that really resonated with you? Something that message that you resonated in your heart already, or something new that you didn't hear? But Terry, you want to just introduce yourself, and maybe we got a microphone here. We'll get some people run around with the microphones real quickly. But Terry?
Hi, my name is Terry Schreiber, and I am part of the consortium on several work groups. I want to applaud all of you for what you're doing. The thing that I was listening for, which maybe save for another day, but I'd like to ask about anyway, is what are we doing? Once the person decides they're ready for recovery, where do they live? Where do they go? So if they're coming out of corrections, if they're living on the street, if they're in a family that supports them, where do they actually go next? So what is sober living doing for them? What are some alternatives? I know the treatment centers, but there aren't enough. I mean, we hear about it all the time. There's not enough. So I'd like your perspective on where do we go in an actionable way.
And this may be one of those questions for the work group, but if there's a panelist or even one of you want to address this in some way real briefly, but it is definitely a question to be asking our community. So what is there? And that really gets to recovery-ready communities. What's a recovery-ready community mean? But anyone want to address or comment at all? Is there, Rob?
That's a great question, right? I know that you asked what is sober living doing for these individuals, and that can be very difficult. I can speak for Crossroads. At Crossroads, we have an intensive case management program. And when those individuals come into sober living, we're also helping them through intensive case management, find services, anything. We help them hook up with vocational rehab. We help them get eyeglasses. We help them get Medicaid transportation if that's what they need. There's also another sober living on below owned by Christ Life Ministries, which is working with offenders. The problem is, and a lot of the time the problem is a lack of work history, a lack of all of these, so many crimes on their background. I don't think that happens at sober living, and I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen when they're locked up, right? But with us, the intensive case management program that we've developed and several other people in the state have intensive case management, it's taking care of those needs. The problem is, how do we identify those people? How do we get them to walk through our door? And they have to almost be in recovery in order to get those services. And so for us, we try to put it out there to them that if they walk through the door, we'll try to walk with them the rest of the way.
I'm sure that others may have a little other comments, but I think there was another question on this side of the room. I'm going to over here, so we'll have you identify yourself at the microphone here and get your comment.
Hi, my name is Michelle Ryan, and I'm also in recovery, and I'm also in the business of treating people for substance abuse disorder. I think that what was missing in this session was the fact that this is a brain disease, not a moral failing, and I think that more people, that we need to, that language needs to be spoken more often when we're talking about recovery. I'm looking at you right now, and I'm so glad that you were part of the panel. I'm talking to the person in recovery that's recovering from meth and her children. I too am in recovery, and I have 2 sons that are also in recovery. So for me, I can just tell you personally that when I found out this was a brain disease and that it wasn't a moral failing, it gave me hope. And I think that message needs to be spread more widely, and I would like to see maybe in the next panel a doctor of addiction come and actually explain the science behind what addiction is in the brain.
Yeah, you bring up a point in terms of just a lot of this work is that language. How do we talk about this? That's important for people to understand, particularly folks on both ends, not only someone who is going to be looking at facing this issue for themselves personally, but what about the people around them? So this kind of language is really critical, and I think that's certainly something we're learning from folks and working together is how do we speak about this, right? Okay, any other comments or two? I want to put anyone else on the spot. Yes, go ahead. Identify yourself, Jim. We got a microphone coming to you right over here. Right.
Yeah, I just would say that a lot of the comments that were shared just show the importance of getting to people young. I mean, this is happening to people in middle school and high school in our state, and they have no one. And that's what's leading to just, it sounds like to me, just turns into a huge rolling ball instead of addressing it right when we're in middle and high school, which it sounds like 4 out of 5 that become addicted really started something in high school. So I appreciated all your involvement and what everyone shared.
Yeah, that's a really best thing for our buck is really to work with these younger people as well. Any other comments? Anything touch people you heard today? Yes, go ahead. One more comment, and then we'll conclude here.
My name is Dawn O'Keefe, and I'm an ER nurse at Anschutz campus. There's been a number of recovery programs that have closed within the state within the last year. How do we specifically put pressure on any of those facilities that were very successful in recovery open again? I think that type of messaging to the public sends a lot of negative and a lot of further stigma on people and patients that there's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah, and this is certainly an issue that's come up in our the legislature has formed this interim study group on opioids and other substance use, and we've heard this as well, both in terms of facilities that have closed, as well as the challenges. And it's an interesting issue because, as we heard earlier, that we do have beds available, but they're not being filled. There's something not quite working out right in terms of the way these things get paid for.
Not in rural Colorado.
And not in rural Colorado, so you haven't filled up in rural.
No, we do not have the beds.
You don't even have the beds, so there you go. So that's your point. Things are closing up. You don't even have that access. So yes, we have some work. We have quite a bit of work to do. But I have to tell you, this year, last year and a half is, I think we've seen a galvanized effort from more disciplines. The testimonies that came in that interim study committee from so many different fields. It's just astounding how this problem, particularly with the opioids, is impacting so many different parts of our society. But it is an opportunity to galvanize folks to look at the whole system as a whole. Prevention, treatment, harm reduction, treatment, and then recovery as well. So we thank you for the comment, but it's definitely something on our radar screen we're going to have to keep working towards. So I'm going to introduce here, this is for the camera, too, if people want to see Dr. Rob Valek. Rob, you want to stand up for a second? Really work hard on this consortium, and the consortium is willing to be the house and the home for Colorado Recovery Ready Colorado. And so we're really looking forward to what the consortium network and infrastructure can do to help promote this work. And again, as you heard from our Attorney General, full support from this office to continue to support that. So with that, I'm going to conclude with this, is that there were a few key people that really put a lot of effort, because we've been not only planning this, but there were several Facebook Live events, et cetera, but several really key folks that really helped with the planning. But certainly, Reedy Dudweiler in my office, really astounding. Acumen, etc. About how many folks do you think were on the Facebook? Come on, do we have a sense of folks that were watching right now? And then we'll give you a sense of what the reach is going to be. But do we have a sense?
Up till today, we were reaching across the state. We had hit about 39 different areas within the state, and we were at about 15,000 unique users that were following us through Facebook.
So we were doing these Facebook Live events.
Yeah.
About how many of those? 4 of those we did?
4.
So about 15,000 folks who viewed our Facebook Live around Recovery Ready Colorado across the state and in the nation. And so really the Facebook Live, what we're doing here today is going to have a really broad reach across the state. So thank you. Other folks to recognize are the folks that helped with the planning, but Molly Smith, thank you Molly for all of your effort with what's going on here. Anna Neal from Eliminating Colorado helped us with some of these presenters. Laura Reaver here with the camera as well. Lastly, did I get it right? Kenny helped us out as well. Mackenzie was part of the planning group. And we want to get Gina Oberding. And Michael Davidson over here with that work there. And then, of course, Mr. Michael Miller really helping us out with the No, this was the core group of people, and then of course Justin was not able to be with us here today, so I'm hoping he's going to watch it. So.
Joe Ellis.
Oh, and Joseph, right over here. Joseph Ellis, right over here. Thank you, Joseph. Who else did I miss? Anyone? All right. So, folks, it's a beginning, and if you are in social media savvy, this is going to be posted on somewhere.
Recovery Ready Colorado.
There you go, Recovery Ready Colorado. So please share it, get it out to your networks. And there's plenty of food, and they did get forks this time. So there's some food out here at the door. Network with some folks, grab some food, hang out. Thank you all very much. Good work, folks.